Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is our final session of the seminar, and we're going to hear about something close to all our hearts, which is opportunity. I'd like to invite our panel to join me on the stage, and once again we have some excellent panelists for you. Firstly, we have Lars Appelqvist, CEO at Lofbergs in Sweden, Joseph Cheng, General Manager in the coffee and tea business at Guangdong Shunda in China. We have Steve Landry, Vice President of Coffee Operations at JM Smucker, Gavin Burton, Head of Technical Competence at Nestlé's Product Technical Centre, and Leonardo Langhi, who is Group Production Manager at UCC Europe Limited. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. I think it's fair to say that the last decade or so, and particularly the last 5 years, have seen a tremendous amount of innovation in the coffee industry. One of the most obvious developments in established markets has been the emergence of the single-serve segment, led by companies such as Keurig Dr Pepper and by Nestlé. Talking about Keurig Dr Pepper, it's also important to note that there's been a huge amount of consolidation in the industry too, led by companies like JEB Holdings. Well-known brands such as Peet's, Keurig, Stumptown and Caribou have all been acquired. And mergers such as these between Keurig and Dr Pepper have created new entities that combine drink and distribution synergies for coffee-based beverages. In some respects, this situation is not unlike what's happened in other industries like the beer industry, where an acquisitive company is shaking things up and acquiring companies, but at the same time, you might call the craft side of the industry is becoming increasingly interesting to acquirers. We've also seen cold brew come to the fore in the US and other products such as nitro. So, gentlemen, if I might ask you each in turn to start with, what do you see as the most important recent innovations in the last few years? And what do you think is actually driving this development of new products? Lars, where would you start?
I would say that, of course, you have the single-served trend, but I think the coffee shops are actually really pushing things because that's where the innovation comes now when it comes to taste, different blends. And it's interesting for us as working with coffee because coffee is such a good ingredient for that, to actually be really creative. So I think the coffee shop will be also in the future the driver.
Fair enough. So what people drink in the coffee shops will drive what you guys develop subsequently and give them in their homes.
Yeah, because you also see that the young consumers today, they meet the coffee for the first time at Starbucks, for example, or other coffee shops. Not at the workplace as we did when we were starting working. Yep. We drank coffee because we were tired. Yes. Now they are experiencing coffee in a totally different way at the coffee shop.
Yes. Joseph, what do you see as the main driver of the change and the innovation in the industry?
I think the coffee shops is the main key. And the coffee shops do play a great role in China. As you know, there was no any coffee shops historic in China before. We usually drink tea, but no coffee. And nowadays for Chinese, drinking coffee is more on the social interaction and emotional satisfaction. Especially, we have to appreciate to Starbucks because they are willing to open a large coffee shop throughout China, even though the small city. And people, of course, would like to try the coffee when they enter in a very beautiful, stylish store. So they have a chain. They bring it is Starbucks bring the third space concept into China. So the Chinese have a lot of chance to know about coffee culture and are attractive to the market.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Steve, is it the coffee shops for you?
Yeah.
So obviously, I think back to my children. I think about yesterday's seminar. I was just telling the panelists here that felt like, in general, we're a little bit older than the previous presenters as they talk, and it's all about the younger generation. And I think about my children today. They could make a cup of coffee. I have coffee in a pot that I've made, but they still want to leave the house and go to the coffee shop. So whether or not it's Starbucks or your local small brewery, it's all about the experience.
Yeah.
And I think that innovation is going to continue to grow, and you're going to cultivate that knowledge and creativity of the younger generation. And the people that figure out how to do that and serve that generation's intuitive knowledge. I think it also feeds, to be brutally honest, the whole one cup. I don't think they really know how to make a pot of coffee. So they really, you do it, put it in a machine, your single serve pod or your cup or whatever type of brewer you have, and you just push a button.
Yeah.
Right? So, and it makes it the same every single time. So I think it's a combination of these machines that have made it really easy, as well as the whole experience. And I agree that it's at a much younger age.
Yeah. So there's a demographic thing going on there as well.
Absolutely.
Not old guys like us, but younger people who are now becoming coffee drinkers.
I think it's going to drive a lot of what's happening.
Right. Gavin, is that something you'd agree with broadly? You see the same drivers happening?
Yeah, I see coffee shops obviously leading the trend and creating the trend, but if I then turn that into what's that doing to the retail segment, it's creating a whole new opportunity in retail to bring out-of-home experience in-home. And if I look at soluble coffee, which is obviously an area that Nestle is playing strongly in, then our real challenge has been how to move our soluble products closer to an out-of-home experience. So things like micronization, addition of micronized roast and ground coffee, the crema layer on the cup are all ways of bringing roast and ground cues into a soluble, in-home experience, which is closer to out-of-home.
Yeah.
And for me, those are the things that are driving, linked with machines as well. So machines are really key to bringing that out-of-home experience into the house.
So machines, demographics, and quality.
Yes.
Yeah. Leonardo, is that?
No, it's the same experience. What I have to add is that we were talking about the single serve, but I want to add as well there a point that changed a lot the industry, the coffee industry, are the material that we are using in all the products. On the single serve, for example, I remember that 20 years ago, we were used to produce with the machinery running at 100 pieces per minute, 200 pieces per minute. And then when you enter in the factory, there are machines running 1,000. It's huge. It's huge, the differences and the technology evolution that we had in the last years. Coffee shops, of course, is a good point for this industry, but I think that as well the technology improved a lot.
Fair enough. When we talk about innovation, I think maybe we fall into the trap of focusing on innovation from the mature market, but a lot of the world still consumes soluble coffee. So what kind of innovation is taking place in that sector to bring consumers into the market and to bring them on to new products? Is that something that maybe Gavin, Joseph, Leonardo, you could address?
Yeah, I think in the questions you sent out, you said, how can we move from the unsophisticated soluble coffee to a more sophisticated product? And I took umbrage to that statement because I'm not sure soluble coffee is unsophisticated. From a technology point of view, it's probably the most sophisticated we have in terms of processing. But I think probably what's probably becoming unsophisticated is the ritual of preparation. And I think consumers are moving away from tin and spoon and boiling a hot water kettle.
Yeah.
So I think it's the preparation mode that's probably becoming unsophisticated. But that doesn't mean to say that with the innovations we have with machines, we've just built a very successful business in Japan with a barista machine based on soluble coffee, which can produce 5 very different high-quality products. So I think there's still space for soluble coffee to be more sophisticated, but it's about the ritual, I think, of preparation.
Steve, do you want to add?
Clearly, Europe and Asia has a different market than North America. In general, when people talk about soluble coffee or instant coffee, they're thinking about something quick, generally cheap, and probably not quite, they would never call it premium. So I do agree that Nestle is, the leader in the world around soluble coffee from that standpoint. So the market potential is clearly bringing that capability to North America. That's clearly some innovation that could be reapplied.
Fair enough. Lars, you were telling me an interesting story about developments in China and Luckin Coffee and how people go about actually ordering their coffee. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's something that...
Probably
really
you
could
know
change.
more than I about that, but we just saw that player popping up really rapidly in China. Luckin Coffee raised a lot of money, $250 million a year ago. I think they have 600 units now. And what they are actually doing, catching another part of the market, because if you have the young people of today, you know, playing e-games and stuff like that, they expect quick feedback. They want it to go fast and quick. The coffee shops today are artisan. It takes a lot of time, and that actually is something that you would like it to do because that's quality. It takes time to prepare the coffee. You show off a little bit. But you miss out that target group, which wants speed.
Yeah.
And what Luckin Coffee is doing is like automation. They have a few hole in the wall. Few people actually pushing a button. You order the coffee in an app, and you have the coffee in like 20 seconds or 2 minutes. A decent cup of coffee. So that's something I think would actually attract a new target group, not just the ones that are going to the
Do you think it might
artisan.
attract a target group in the established markets one day as well?
Yeah, I think so. The other thing with coffee shop I think is important to raise is that what they are doing is they are actually raising the sustainability issue in a really good way, and the origins of coffee and where it comes from, and the history and the story around coffee. I think that is an important driver also. So.
Steve, is that a model you could see being applied in the US? Ordering on an app, picking up your coffee very...
Well, clearly people do care very much about the origin of all their products. And so, although we talked earlier about our supply chain in coffee, it's very difficult to know exactly which field it was actually picked from because of this current supply chain. But people really do care about that. I think people care about sustainably sourced coffee.
Sure.
I think it is a focus. It's, you know, I applaud Starbucks for their effort. I think they're obviously leading the way and understanding, and it aligns very much with their mission. So I think that that's very important because the consumer does care, especially our Gen X and the millennials.
Right.
So that's the next biggest generation that's going to be sitting up here next. So.
Yeah, but you have quite a big effort around sustainability at Smuckers, don't you? Can you tell us a bit about that? I mean, it's about reducing emissions in the US,
so
reducing water use.
We actually have two different organizations. So we have one that focuses on green coffee sourcing, and then we also have a sustainability effort within our operations team where we're driving water reduction, greenhouse gas reduction, and we're driving all of our plants to be landfill reduction, to be 100% landfill aversion rate. So we've chosen that as a corporation as a way to make a difference. I think the next generation, the good news is we set some goals for 2020, and as a company we've achieved them 2 years early. It's part of the learning of when you set a goal and you put a team against it, you'll clearly achieve those goals. So those are good, some really good learnings. I think the next level will be more on the social aspect. So, you know, I was impressed with what Starbucks talking about their neighborhood. You know, where we make our products, I think we do a really good job of helping our neighborhoods. I know in New Orleans alone, my team has put in over 10,000 volunteer hours helping people rebuild their homes. So that's also a sustainability effort that we don't always talk about. But it also helps you attract the best talented people because they want to come work for you if that's really the type of company that you are.
Yeah, fair enough. Leonardo, is that something that's important to your company, the whole sustainability thing? Is that and how does it manifest itself at your company?
No, it's important. There are a lot of initiatives that are growing. It's a new area for sure that we have to discover. There are positive aspects and then other aspects that impact a lot to the production. It's as I said, it's important to understand exactly what is the best way to introduce sustainability. because sometimes in terms of investments, it's nothing, but in terms of organization as well, it's huge. And for this reason, there are a lot of projects ongoing here.
Yeah. Gavin, did you want to add anything about sustainability efforts at Nestlé?
We have an umbrella concept called the Nescafé Plan, which is around sustainable agronomy. So we have our R&D tour research center looking at high-yielding, disease-resistant plantlets, which we're distributing to our farmers. We have agronomists in all of the producing markets, helping them to generate better yields from their plants. We have targets to increase direct procurement, so cutting out the middleman in the process, giving a higher price to farmers. And our 2020 commitments of reducing energy and water per ton by 30% are important in our operations. So the Nescafé Plan is sort of an umbrella project which covers a number of pillars in the total.
Joseph, is the sustainability piece important in China yet? Is it something that coffee drinkers are aware of or that you need to respond to?
Yes. Let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm Joseph from Shenda, company from China. I think the China market is the most potential market in coffee. Let's talk about the situation in the coffee market in China recently. And last year, there are nearly 400,000 tons of coffee bean imported into Japan, which have a population about 120 million population. However, there was only 50,000 tons beans imported into China, which have 1.5 billion population. And so the number of China import volume is relatively low for now. And among the 1.5 billion people in China, there are about 900 million people are aging in 16 to 59. We can say the age range for coffee. So at least, I think there are about at least 500 million potential coffee customers for the future in China. So we estimate maybe in 10 years, the number of China green bean import volume will be 1 million tons in 10 years because of the population. It is because there will be definitely more and more people because a lot of coffee shops, so they enter the coffee shop to drink coffee and more green bean import into China, especially in fresh ground and the specialty coffee segments. So the market is continuous growing fast and the size is blooming in China.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lars, your company's got a very good track record in sustainability and sustainability efforts. And one area that interests me in particular is packaging. Packaging for almost every kind of product is changing, but you're looking at all kinds of things, aren't you? Bio-based packaging, a lot of different products.
Yeah, what we have been aiming for is to actually reduce the fossil, produced with fossil. And what we are actually doing, we launched a couple of years ago an espresso copy with it was compostable. So we're really trying to push that. Now 40% of our packaging material in all is actually bioplastic, which means that we are reducing our footprint radically. We will also, during the autumn here, launch totally new material in the UK with our small brand there, which will be really niched, which will be compostable in households actually.
Right.
So we're really trying to drive that because I think that's important that someone is doing that.
Sure.
To then take the next step to commercialize it, because now the unit price, of course, is too high. So I would also like to add, when it comes to sourcing coffee and sustainability, I think the next step in the coming 5 years, it has to be that we really change the way we source coffee. We have to source it sustainable. We see now that the prices are terribly low, and the type of coffee we want to buy, that's origins. Where you actually handpick, and they don't get enough paid today. And what's happening is in those countries, they are actually quitting. And they will not come back because these countries has developed the last 20 years. So there are other jobs for them.
Yes.
If you look back, they went back when the prices went back, but that will not happen this time, probably. And then we will be there actually with too little coffee of good quality. Of course, we can produce more Robusta and mainstream Brazil, but maybe that's not what we really are looking for in the future.
So as far as the packaging is concerned, it's technically doable, but at the moment the price is a bit high.
It's too expensive to make it mass production,
Yeah.
and also to produce it in all the machines is quite difficult. But
Right.
it's important to drive that.
Yeah.
It's many solutions on these problems. I think you can't find one. You have to drive
sure.
a lot of different tracks.
Sure. Steve, is that also an issue in the US, packaging? Is it
Well,
something that
clearly,
Smugger's looking at?
I feel like North America follows the rest of the world. If you look at our K-Cup business, it's pretty substantial and it's growing double digits. So it's obviously pretty critical for our coffee business. But it's not compostable like what you're talking. So do I see that that's innovation coming? I think it's going to be required, and I think it's going to be mandatory that we move that packaging. I think today the American consumer likes the convenience of it's quick, it's the same every single time, and it's individualized. I do think having it individualized is also important, whether or not it's flavor or strength. So those are important, but I do believe the next generation is going to demand. I mean, we already see it in Canada, where our K-Cups are becoming where you got to peel them apart. But again, you can recycle the components. You can start composting parts, etc. So
Yes.
clearly, it's coming. It's just a matter of when.
Leonardo, would you agree with that?
No, I agree. As well, we are doing some studies regarding the compostable, starting, for example, for the capsules, but we are encountering a lot of problems, especially in the production. And our new materials, and especially I heard before in the meeting before that a lot of companies are looking for compostable, for example, for the capsules, oxygen-tight products, but compostable. It's really hard. It's really hard to have a reliable product, especially if in the Me Too. The point is that we have to respect the customers, of course, but we have to explain them that sometimes it's not easy to develop this kind of product. On the other side, I have to say that in all the other areas we are really focused because the request of the market is really high, and as well there we are trying to introduce new materials. So we are really focused on the material development.
Okay.
Can I add one thing there? I think I think the single serve is here to stay. I think
It's here.
for sure. But the problem with the capsules today in pods is the amount of waste. I mean, it's like a package of 500 grams. That's actually 60 capsules.
Yep.
What I think could be a trend is the bean-to-cup machine. When those prices are coming down, people get the quality, they get fresh coffee, they get single served. So I think that will actually replace pods in the future, moving to cheaper machines, mass produced.
Right, so we might bypass that issue. Yeah. Gavin, was there anything you wanted to add about that?
I think the single serve, in the sense of a machine dosage, is something that could come, but the single serve in form of a stick, if I think about what our business is in ASEAN, this is where we're having sea waste issues. We are seeing huge pressures from some of the authorities and countries, and we have the majority of the market share, so we have the majority of the sea waste. And technology is not there in terms of material science yet. To give, I think we spoke earlier about the oxygen barrier requirements, the moisture barrier requirements. So industry has a lot to do to catch up and innovate on a packaging front before we can really conquer this. And we made our commitments earlier this year on recyclability of our packaging. But technically, we don't have all the answers today, and it will not be cheap, and it will not give you this current shelf life that we enjoy with our products. So there'll be compromises to make.
Fair enough.
But it's important to be in front of the legislation, I think. That the industry drives it by ourselves and not getting caught by the legislations, because then we will have a high pressure on that.
Fair enough. We were talking earlier about the new model that Luckin Coffee is pioneering in China. More recently, you've got the Starbucks relationship with Alibaba. Do you see that become? I mean, China's still a relatively new market, but it's a relatively new way of doing things too with Starbucks and Alibaba. Do you think those are models which are going to have more application elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, you see people demands quick deliveries. I think Alibaba's record now is 40 seconds from actually ordering to delivery. That's probably rigged a little bit, but 5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
Because Alibaba can actually forecast the demand. It's about big data.
Yeah.
They have the data. They can forecast. Okay, people will demand this in this area, and they put it on the truck, and then they order it, and you can be there in 5 minutes. Of course, they will demand that when it comes to coffee also.
Yeah.
So we have to be there.
Yeah. Steve, do you think that's going to happen in the US? Do you think it's taking off?
You
Potential?
drive the car, drive through.
Amazon does have a much bigger effect than I ever thought it would,
Yes.
of delivering your groceries, delivering your so I think we'll be a follower. We maybe not even a fast follower. I still think Americans are too lazy. So it's my opinion.
I think there's quite a polarizing effect. I think we'll see this rapid demand for fast, quick, good quality coffee.
Yes.
But I think the artisanal element will come in as well. Yeah?
Yeah.
So at home, the ritual, the preparation, be it pour over bag, where people want to take time to prepare the
Sure.
cup.
Yeah.
So it'll almost polarize, I think, the preparation.
It needs organization, of course.
Leonardo, you had a big grin on your face at one point when Steve was describing the US market.
Yeah.
What's your take on all of this?
No, but I have the same opinion of him. It's about organization. It's very nice to deliver in a very short term, but there needs an organization before. So all the industry has to be aligned and all the process has to be connected. So it's not easy, but it's the future. It's the future. So we need to be prepared, and we need to redesign all the flows. And we are talking with you. Supply chain will be the most important part of the chain.
Joseph, what's your take on the Alibaba tie-up with Starbucks? Do you think it's going to take off?
I think that's a very good thing. And first, in fact, the e-commerce is a new trend in China, because according to the data last year, there were 2 million orders of food delivered on APP in China. That's quite per day. So, and the deliveries were up to 330,000. The income was $300 billion per year from online food delivery. So not just for coffee, for everything. In China, it's not necessary to actually to go to the coffee shop for the coffee. You can literally click a few buttons as your phone, and the fresh ground coffee will be delivered to your house, your office, even though Starbucks in 20 minutes. That's okay. But I think the role of the coffee shop will be replaced. So we have to work or to enjoy our life there. But in China, you can do everything with your iPhone. So the deliver and the digital for coffee is the trend.
Yeah.
I think.
Thank you. Gentlemen, and I'd like to ask you a few for your thoughts each in turn about what you think is coming next. What should the coffee industry focus on in future to continue to compete with other beverages and grow its market share? And what lessons can or has the coffee industry learnt from other sectors? So what do you see as coming next? Lars, can we start with you?
As I said before, I think the coffee shops will drive the trend because that's where you have the creative people. And coffee will be really interesting there due to its health effects. I think you will have other type of coffee drinks, like, we are actually launching this week kombucha in Sweden, and I saw that Coca-Cola is following us, buying something in Australia. But I think you will see kombucha on coffee, for example, probiotic coffee drinks, which is good for health, stuff like that. But it will be very diversified, so production guys will be really sweaty because there will be so many different packaging formats, blends. So I think also you have 3 main trends in a way. It's it's the sustainability, it's the health
Yeah.
and traceability.
Yes.
You want to know where it comes from.
Yeah.
And we have solved that in the coffee industry from an industry point of view, but we haven't made it transparent to the consumer. I think that is the next step for us to solve.
Traceability is something we haven't talked about a great deal, but Steve, is that also a big issue for you? Do you think the traceability thing is going to grow?
I think sustainability will come first.
Right.
Clearly, the traceability. Now, obviously, coffee having a kill step in roasting the coffee and then brewing the coffee helps, right? So traceability really comes into food products when there's a food safety element. So, we were talking to somebody earlier about cold brew, where, it's the cold water and the handling of the coffee could materialize. So usually in the U.S., traceability is linked back to a food safety item. More so, people care more about the environment than they would. It's not that it's not interesting. I do think it's important. I think the next trend is if we can communicate. We are all defining what good is. Yesterday Tim made a presentation that he'd worked 20 years in the industry running a shop, and I don't think he ever said in his whole 20 years that he ever made a good cup of coffee. He made a point to say, after this year, I still didn't make a good cup of coffee. So I believe he makes an amazing cup of coffee. So it's if we can educate people what good is. Now, we've arbitrarily said what's premium. We've said what specialty is. So I do think, we've communicated to the consumer a lot about it, the emotion, because you feel really good when you smell that cup of coffee in the morning. It wakes you up, and that emotion, people remember. So if we can educate people a little bit more of why is it that they like the taste and what they're buying. So that personalization, I think, is going to be another element. So I agree, clearly the sustainability part, but I think the personalization and how you do that, that's where the bean to cup machine would really come into play, where people will actually learn from all of the shops that are out there. I know my two daughters would love to have that education and knowledge. So the people that are out there and providing that, maybe the Alibabas can, say, hey, I got a 100% Ethiopian blend with this microgrind combination, and maybe it gets really specialized. I think the educational part is part of our future.
Fair enough. Gavin, Leonardo, is the education part, the traceability part important to you, or are there other things that you think will be important in the future?
In terms of what's coming next, I think this is a great time, by the way, to be in this industry. I mean, I think I've been in 22 years in coffee, and there was times when you were a bit embarrassed to say, I make coffee. We talked about going to the doctor and the analogy, and now we're in a really positive, growing business. And I think when I look at coffee, where can it go next? And we're already starting to move into the alcohol moments, and I think this will continue as a trend. So, and now with the whole focus on obesity and sugar tax, obviously moving into the soft drinks environment is another huge opportunity for the category. So yeah, we're re-established in the sort of start of the day, mental alertness, which is where our home territory has always been. But I think we have huge opportunities in other categories, and if we're going to seize them, certainly in retail, we have to get faster. Right. We have to speed up innovation and renovation.
Yeah. Right.
We have to do it at the speed the soft drinks business is doing today. So not a 1 or 2 year innovation cycle. This has to be, less than 1 year and much faster.
So the soft drinks market is your target, kind of, is it really? Is where you think you can win market share from?
I'm not saying it's our target as Nestle, but I think as a category, it's an opportunity. I mean, and you think the recent acquisition from sort of Coca-Cola, they must be thinking we need to get into coffee. Everybody wants to get into coffee today. For me, it's a great category to be in. It's very vibrant has a lot of energy going around at the moment.
Leonardo, are you of the same mind?
Well, more or less the same. I think that in any case, when I'm in front of my colleagues and from the marketing, I'm scared because every time I have discussion with them and they are proposing a lot of different things, new opportunities, and I'm scared because I have to translate the opportunities in production. But the reality is that this is the future. Is something that we have to learn. And for example, I think that as well we have to cooperate more with the suppliers. I thank Probat, Mr. Gavin, to be here, but I think that as well they have to help us like partners, and we have to work with them in order to find the proper solution in a faster time. As I said, sometimes we need less than 1 year. But if you think when we order a machinery, at least you need 8 months. 10 months to have the machine. So you need to plan everything before. And because of this, it's evident that we need an help from the suppliers as well to obtain and to reach the goal. Yeah. And this is what we are trying to do in UCC. It's
Steve, do you see the distribution thing as important? Because as I understand it, that was an element in the Keurig Dr. Pepper deal, wasn't it? That
yes.
Dr. Pepper has this enormous distribution network that Keurig can use. Is the distribution thing important?
So clearly, if you're going to have a DSD network and get to them, that's very important. And I think that's why Coke's, I agree with you that that's a really smart move by the Coke. They obviously have a pretty big network.
Yeah.
It's a good acquisition for them. They're partnering there. So clearly, that's not our model today, but clearly we need to figure out how to play in that.
Yeah.
And I do think partnerships are going to be key. Our keynote speaker this morning talked about what's happening in the industry. There's a lot more partnerships coming. I think you're going to see more of that.
So you can see more tie-ups between coffee companies and companies which aren't pure coffee.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Would you agree?
I think so. When I say Coca-Cola, of course they want into the coffee industry because it will be a very good product to replacing soft drinks, for example. But you also what they see there, Costa have 4,000 sites close to the community, meeting people every day.
Absolutely.
That's what they are trying to reach now because they want to go around the retailers and meet the consumers directly, make a connection with them. I think that will also be a key for us as roasters to actually connect with the consumers directly. Today we have the retailers setting the stage for that, which we don't like. I think retailers are fine in many ways, but we need to get closer to customers, and that's what Coca-Cola is doing there, I think.
Yeah. You go along with that, would you, Steve?
Yeah. I can envision where people are going to, I still think personalization is going to be a key theme, and people that can actually educate people enough to know what to ask for. And I think the coffee shops are going to be a key part of that, and being able to deliver it. And so that's where partnering with an Amazon or Alibaba to work with these small coffee roasters. And we're not all going to have the luxury of making huge volumes of the same thing day in and day out. So I think specialization is going to be challenging us all the time.
Fair enough, thank you. So one last question for you all before we run out of time. There's obviously been a lot of change in the market in the last 5 years with single serve, with nitro, with all kinds of cold brew. If we were to meet again in 5 years or 10 years' time, would we be drinking the same coffee? Would we be drinking totally new types of coffee? And how would that coffee be being prepared? How would that whole piece change? Lars?
Yes and no. We will do it the same way as we do today, but we will do it in many different ways also. Again, I think the bean to cup will be improving and actually grow. You will see coffee shops, actually, you have one in San Francisco, Cafe X, with just a robot. That's quite interesting. They can prepare a good cup of coffee. So you will see many different ways, flavors. I think, again, sustainability, the health thing, fresh coffee will be very, very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joseph, what will the Chinese coffee drinker be drinking in 5 years' time? Will they still be drinking a lot of soluble, much more roast and ground?
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
Chinese drink coffee in a very emotional situation. Chinese customer post their coffee shop visits on their app, not Facebook, but only WeChat. So fast it's really easy to get about. If your place is very nice, you have good decoration. As consumer develop more sophisticated in China, not just soluble coffee, but they drink a lot of fresh ground coffee and specialty coffee. The pricing structures for the coffee shop is totally higher because they have to make the good environment, good people. Even though the Chinese customer 1700 just ordered a latte, but the more cafes trying to new concept like nitro cold brew, because higher price, because good quality, good flavor, and so you can see the nitro cold brew is also increase the sales, good sales, and recognized by many young people. So I think in Chinese, the new way to prepare, new way to drink coffee is very possible, and will very pop by the young people like it.
Okay.
Yes.
Steve, what are we going to be drinking and how are we going to be preparing it?
So I'm in my third year in the coffee business, and the trends I don't think will stop for the next 5 years, that people are shifting more to a premium coffee. So they're learning from their coffee shops. They're buying what they perceive to be premium. So I think the challenge is the coffee industry educating people that what's really good for them versus what we think is good. Okay,
Right.
so I still think that that's the key. I also think that the roasts have gotten darker. So it feels like the continuum, and I think that's partly because of the coffee shops. 4 out of 5 people today put cream and sugar or one or the other in their cup of coffee. So think about it, only 1 out of 5 people today drink just a black cup of coffee.
Right.
So that's a huge shift. So I don't see that stopping. So I think it's going to continue that way.
Thank you. Gavin, what are we going to be drinking and how are we going to be doing it?
I think if I talk about in-home, which is where most of the coffee is drunk,
Yep.
not perhaps most of the value, but it's most of the volume, we don't move so fast. We move in generations rather than in years. So if I'm honest, there'll be lots of new products, there'll be lots of new trends, but I don't see our coffee consumption habits changing in a period as short as five years.
Right. So despite the sort of advent of nitro and other
These
products,
will all come, yeah. All of these new products will come, and they'll come. More products will flow through, and we'll see, as I say, more out-of-home experience coming into the home, which we're already seeing today. But I think we'll also start to see out-of-home brands coming into the home. At the moment, it's products, so it's cappuccinos, it's lattes, but we'll start to see the brands coming with them over the coming. So this could well happen within this sort of 5-year horizon, I think.
Thank you. Leonardo, what
More or less the same opinion, because if you consider that in a cup of coffee, if we measure the total dissolved solid is close to 3.8%, so it's nothing, and all the other part is water, so we have a lot of opportunity to mix the coffee with other things. Point is, in a so small period of time, I don't see in the technology a big changes. In my opinion, it's more connected to the coffee shop way to distribute, to propose things, and in the tools, especially in the soft or the net application that we could have, that we could change a bit the way to taste and to serve the coffee. But I have the same opinion.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to close by reiterating what Gavin said, that it's a good time to be in coffee, isn't it? I think there's a hell of a lot going on, and will be a lot more in the next 5 to 10 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you put your hands together, please, and thank our excellent panellists.
This is good.
Thank you very much.
Very nice.